Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we're going to be taking a first look at Mythic Skeleton Steve, who is going to be the Halloween event character. If you want to find out more about the Halloween event, check out the link in the top right hand corner. But visually, well, we've had Steve in the past. I think he was a Warrior Champions character in the past, and that was pretty much it. And otherwise, this is the first Steve that's been kind of like available to everybody. And he kind of is dressed up like a skeleton. Yeah, the clue's in the name. If anyone's ever seen the original Karate Kids, they'll know that this is what Johnny kind of looks like in the original Karate Kid. I think even down to the banner. I think whatever we want to call it, like the tie around his head. I think Johnny had a tie around his head as well. Maybe. I'm not 100% certain. But he's got the skeleton suit on. It's really cool. On the left-hand side, you can see it in a bit more detail, and he has a sick-looking pistol on the left-hand side. So maybe that weapon will be available at some point in the future as well. We'll have to wait and see. We'll check out the stats, though, of Skeleton Steve. At level 680, Limit Break 2, he has got 14,465 attack, 16,394 defense, and 17,358 HP. He is an alert character, of course, holding that pistol. He is considered a tank, and those are very tanky stats. Mythic character, and yet another character to join the Holiday Heroes Allegiance. And this is apparently going to be an allegiance of Holiday Heroes, if it, again, pretty obvious. And if you get, I believe, 5 of these characters to grade 5, there will be a future event / roadmap available to you to run to get a special weapon. But more on that in the future once it is fully announced. First off with Skeleton Steve, we are going to check out his Adrenaline Rush, and it is called Peekaboo. It is a 55 AP cost rush, so as a tank that's actually pretty good, because then he'd be able to use very heavy stats on a defense team. Deal 400% damage to one enemy, up to 3 enemies get disarm, and minus 30% attack for 2 turns. And this is, obviously there's 2 parts to this. The damage is pretty decent. 400% is pretty decent. The up to 3 enemies get disarm and minus 30% attack for 2 turns doesn't target any specific types of enemies like a lot of characters do. A lot of characters target like actual damage deal rolls, the damage roll characters. So this will be just anybody, and disarm will stop things like stun on attack, double attack, these sort of things, and any special, basically anything that requires maybe someone's HP being a certain amount to do extra damage, which I do see a lot of people using, including myself. So I'll disable all of these, and basically it's going to reduce the damage potential of the characters that it does attack, or the control potential, so it is actually pretty decent. And the second half is definitely going to reduce the damage potential. Minus 30% attack is, I think, the largest in the game. There aren't other characters, I think, that actually have it, but there might be one character, maybe Cliff, has a passive. I think maybe it's minus 45% attack when you attack him. He's got a chance of doing that to somebody, but I'm not sure. But this is obviously on the rush, so it's a little bit more powerful here. Okay, so we've got the rush of Steve here, and I can just select a character. I'm going to select the character that hasn't got a defense buff, kind of makes sense. And I will just rush, and you can see the disarm come in, and you'll also see disarm on 2 other characters who would normally, in this sort of case, have absolute defense. But on attack teams, where I think this character is going to primarily be used, it'd be, disarming, like I said before. Double attacks, especially as, Skeleton Steve is an alert character, he's more likely to be facing alert, tough characters, and double attack is a big deal for tough characters. So this will drastically reduce the damage potential of those characters. The damage is okay, obviously, against the defense team character. That's going to be a bit more tanky. It's not going to do much, but against an offensive character, it's going to be much more effective. Now, you also saw the characters that got disarmed also got the attack down, so it seems to be a double debuff on the same characters. It's not like 3 enemies get disarmed and then 3 enemies get attacked down. It seems to be 3 enemies get both of them. Sometimes it's kind of split between the 2. But we'll look at the upgrades though, and it's 100% damage at grade 2, so it goes from 200% to 300%. At grade 4, it gets an extra disarm and attack down target, so it goes from 2 targets to 3. And at grade 5, limit break 1, it gets another 100% damage boost, so it goes from 300% to 400%. In all honesty, I think the grade 4 upgrade is probably the most important on the rush, as obviously him being a tank, it's more of just him being annoying rather than trying to deal huge amounts of damage with his rush. He could potentially finish characters off. He's obviously most of the time going to focus characters where he's going to do trait damage, so he will do slightly more damage in those cases if they are available. Now, while his rush is reasonable, I think a lot of power comes in his signature move, because it is an initial turn 1 signature move called Scaredy Cats. There's an initial cooldown of 1, number of uses unlimited, taunt 1 enemy for 3 turns, all adjacent teammates get camouflage for 2 turns. This will generally mean that 2 of his teammates will get camouflage, but I'm not sure if he gets it himself. We'll check this out. And he's not most of the time going to be in a corner because he is not a leader. But if you did put him in the leader slot, not recommended. Everybody on the team, other than him potentially, would get camouflage. We'll just double check if he gets camouflage or not. But the taunting 1 enemy for 3 turns is very powerful off of turn 1. And again, he could focus basically anyone in your team. A lot of the time, if the AI focuses particular characters, a lot of the time it's your heaviest damage dealer, and your heaviest damage dealer being forced attacked. This particular character, considering his specialist skill, but considering it's 3 turns, very likely to obviously spell doom for that character in the end. Unless they get like Guardian Shields on them or something to block incoming potential damage, it's not good. It's not a good situation for them to be in. So now we'll check out Steve's signature move, and we'll just see who gets the camouflage. Herschel and Eva should get it, but we'll see if Skeleton Steve himself actually gets it as well. So we're going to taunt this character right here, and it is just going to be the characters adjacent to him, not Steve himself. It would have been cool if he got it himself too, but if you've seen other parts of his kit, you know that it could potentially be beneficial for him to actually take splash damage, for him to take like excess damage from rampages and stuff like that. So it can actually be useful. And you can see the enemy is now taunted for 3 turns. And if I just defend on everybody except Rick here, you'll see the forced attack will come in. Eva's most likely going to be absolutely ganged up on, but Steve will gain 3 AP because he gets attacked. So he got attacked once, he gained 5 AP from the attack, and then 2 AP from the amount of HP he lost. And this is going to be the same deal if he's on a defense team. So you've got more chance of things just being nicer when it comes to him gaining AP. He doesn't necessarily need this for the AP, but it's just nicer. And obviously, if you don't remember how camouflage works, basically it stops those characters from taking any sort of damage that is not targeted. So things that would, let's say, Waste Not, a big rush or a big signature move on Waste Not, if the Waste Not damage would go on to someone adjacent to the target you actually try and hit, and it hits, let's say, Eva next to Steve here, and you take out Steve, no damage will be done to Eva, no damage will be done to Herschel. It's really beneficial to slow down attack teams that rely on splash damage, AoE attacks on their actual rushes, and like weapon effects like Rampage and stuff like that. So it's actually really nice. If we look at the upgrades, when it comes to the signature move, you can see at grade 3 it gets -1 cooldown, so it goes from 3 turns to 2 turns. At grade 5 it gets -1 starting cooldown, and that's the important one. It goes from 2 turns to 1 turn. And then at limit break 2 it goes from a 2 turn to 1 turn cooldown signature move. This isn't that important. It would obviously be nuts if it was a 0 turn cooldown. He could just be popping this off every other turn, or every turn, sorry. But right now it's every other turn, and it's always going to focus his rush. So if his rush is up and he can also do this on a defense team, he'll generally rush, even if you would prefer him to do the taunt. But that's the way it goes on defense teams. I think this signature move is good. Obviously, it's going to be taunting, generally speaking, like I said before, a damage dealer into attacking him, making his specialist skill charge up. We're going to look at his specialist skill in a moment, but first on to the passives. And here we have Skeleton Steve's mythic abilities. He is, of course, a tank, so he gets the 40% critical hit resistance. Next up is called Healthy Frame. At the start of each turn, when this character is below 50% HP, heal this character by 40% of their max HP. This is awesome because it generally, he'll always be up to 40% plus base, you know, whatever he's got, if it's under 50%. So if he's at 40%, he'll be at 80%. If he's at 28%, he'll be at 68%. This is really, really, really powerful. Almost like having a fast healing weapons in the team just for himself as an alert character. I like that one quite a lot. The next one is called Strong Bones. Incoming tough trait damage against this character that has its multiplier reduced by 80%. This is really powerful, obviously, just to reduce the potential damage that they're going to take. And it's going to stack with combat mods too, so you can do like defense versus tough as well, which you primarily would do on an alert character who's on a defense team. And he's going to take really, you know, heavily reduced damage. And if you do get that weapon upgrade, like I said, where it's 50% reduced damage from crit, you know, attacks, yeah, that's actually kind of powerful. Last one is called Bone to Pick. When being attacked, 30% chance one enemy gets confused for 2 turns. This is kind of interesting. It isn't going to be the character that attacks him that has the chance to get confused. It's going to be potentially anybody. And my idea here is, I'm going to test this out. If I attack with a character and someone else gets confused and they haven't taken their turn yet, do they just randomly attack instantly? Or will I still get to use them that turn? That's going to be the interesting part, honestly. Okay, so I've got him on a defense team by himself. We're just going to do basic attacks. I want to see if I can make this proc. I want to see if the confuse procs and just confuses someone randomly and they just randomly attack instantly. That would be actually kind of funny. He has got like the weapon I was talking about where he gets bonus defense based on the opponent's HP. So you might see some like red text popping up above the characters that I attack with. It was also worth noting as well, he's not got the leader bonus, so he's not going to be able to take as many hits. And we're going to just see how he does. Basic attack comes in, no confuse. Next basic attack comes in, 30% chance. Oh, we saw what happened there. Next one comes in. So we are going to start the next turn, and he gets the 40% heal. Then he does his taunt. Okay, I'm not sure. I didn't see when that confuse happened. Let's try again. Okay, this is a... We might have to start this again, but I mean, you can see how reasonable he is already, just how things are going right now. Okay, we're just going to attack him, and if we don't get confused, we will probably restart. I just want to see if it can confuse someone first. There we go. You saw it. I hit with Juan. Rosita got confused, and she instantly attacked a teammate. Instantly. That is actually really interesting. I want to see how long this confuse lasts for. Is this one of those 2 turns? Let's hit defend action. She's still confused. I'm going to hit the defend action again. Is she still confused? No. So the turn that the character actually gets the confuse is one of those 2 turns. And if they've already taken a turn, they will only be confused for 1 turn. But if they haven't taken a turn, they will just instantly randomly attack someone. They can potentially resist it. If they have focus, they will not be obviously confused. They will just sort of like ignore it while they have focus. And there are certain characters that completely bypass this, like the recent Herschel that has been released. He obviously has focus at the beginning of every single turn, so that's not going to be too much of a problem for him. But that is actually really funny, honestly. Now, if we look at the upgrades, you can see at grade 1, he gets Healthy Frame, the first half of it, where he gets 20% of his max HP if below 50% HP. At grade 2, he gets the first half of Strength. At grade 3, he gets the second half of Healthy Frame already, so he's going to be able to get the best out of this just by getting 1 gold mythic. And I think this is one of the more powerful parts of his kit, honestly. Next up is Strong Bones, where it reduces the incoming tough multiplier by 40%. That's the first half of it. Next up is Bone to Pick at grade 5, and that's 2 gold mythics to get to grade 5. So you're going to have effectively the windowless Skeleton Steve just by his kit at grade 5. And then you have the Limit Break 1 character getting Strength 2, and that's with Strength 1. And then the second half of Strong Bones, which is the grand total of 80% multiplier reduction for the tough damage, and that is at Limit Break 2. And obviously, I think just all of these are really good at A, keeping him alive, and making him take less damage. They all make sense for his kit, and they're non-RNG based. You know, nothing's like sometimes it will happen, except the on defense thing, 30% chance where he'll confuse someone, but that's how weapons work too, so it makes sense. Like, the heal is guaranteed as long as he's below the HP, and the incoming trait damage is guaranteed if they do trait damage that is, you know, tough trait damage. So there's no like, if he, you know, does his specialist skill, then this thing happens, and then sometimes his specialist skill won't proc, and then he won't have any effect on his passive. So I actually kind of like these. Now, talking of his specialist skill, you probably noticed it from the beginning of the video, but you probably noticed it even more in the last clip. Bide 2, this character stores damage it takes from attacks, active abilities, and rushes after storing damage equal to 30% of his max HP, or if the defend action is used, deal 150% of the stored damage to one enemy immediately. Stored damage is reset to 0 after use, but does not trigger if this character is taken out. And so if you manage to one-shot him, he won't do it. But I think the chance to one-shot Skeleton Steve based on his passives, based on that weapon that you potentially could use to drastically reduce the incoming damage, I think his big susceptibility to a certain extent is, I would say it's infection and just leaving him above 50% HP. So that he doesn't do that self-heal. Obviously, it relies on other characters not healing him on the team too, but yeah, it's a very interesting kit, honestly. And while this is not the first Bide 2 character we've seen in the Mythic era, we have already got Morgan. Morgan does have normalized resist a little bit, so that's a bit of a bonus for his kit. Steve does not have that, but his incoming damage reduction is just nuts, honestly. Really, really good. Now, Steve does not have an attached weapon, and you can pretty much go wherever you want to go on this character, honestly. You could, like I said, just make it a weird stat weapon based on his HP or based on the enemy HP, based on how much damage he takes. I think that's probably a really nice way to go, honestly. Be easier to make. You know, Focus Stun is not the easiest weapon to make, and most of the time people might ignore him anyway. You know, I've been told this, you know, Man on the Moon has said this in the past, that Bide characters in themselves are kind of just windowless just because they got Bide. Because he's also got that passive, I don't think you need that, the rest of it. I think you can just probably just go with something that's going to reduce the damage in the third slot. So like defense, HP, reduce the damage in the third slot, reduce the crit damage in the fourth slot, and just make him this just monster tank on a defense team. Be very interesting. There might be a weapon that already has, you know, defense while certain amount of HP already as well. So that could be interesting. But honestly, you can just put whatever weapon you want to in his hands, as long as it's reasonably defensive if you want to use him on a defense team, and it'll be ready to go. So this is Skeleton Steve, and I think he is a pretty nice character for the Halloween event, and where you can only get 2 characters, you know, 2 of Steve's in the actual event, free to play, that, you know, grade 5 character is still pretty good when it comes to the passives. The stats, on the other hand, might have a little bit of a fall behind, so we'll have to see in the future, because there is meant to be another event down the line where another Steve's going to be made available. It's just going to be how accessible that is. But you, of course, could pick up the extra pass on the side to get Steve the 3rd version. And it seems pretty worthwhile. Mainly, it's going to give you stats for this character. And it will also give you the crit resistance because he'll be limit break 1. And then another 20% less chance to even take a crit would be pretty good too. Now, the big issue I find with Steve is that he doesn't really have much place in many defense teams, especially not free-to-play ones. So it's an event character that's given to a lot of people, but it's only really people with Pamela leads that can really take advantage of this as a character, in my opinion. And that's a bit of a shame. Other people are going to have to use him on pretty much like Magna defense teams, which nobody does, nobody uses, or potentially Glenn defense teams, or Zeke defense teams, you know. He isn't going to be going in like a Barker team. He's not going to be going in a Tara team, so he's kind of just a little bit out of the loop at the moment, but I do think he has good potential going forward. He kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, Wang Fa in the S-Class era, where he maybe just came out a bit earlier, and there's going to be some other characters that come out in the future where this guy's going to work with them really, really nicely. But as it stands, he's a really good lone tank. Going to be very hard to take down. Do tell me your thoughts on this character in the comments down below. That is the end of my video, guys. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.